Hi, I'm Don Corbett. Welcome to mouseclickstv.com. In the studio with me today is Tim Myers, and we're going to talk about some pretty cool stuff about security. What do you got for us today?
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about SCADA, which is Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition.
SCADA.
SCADA. That's what controls like our critical infrastructure. Some of our critical infrastructure, like our water, can be controlled by SCADA. The electric can be controlled by SCADA.
A lot of the utility.
Yeah, nuclear plants can be controlled by SCADA.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk a little bit about some trivial stuff like cyber attacks against the United States.
And how SCADA can be affected by that.
SCADA can be affected by it. There's all different types. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Zeus Trojan. You familiar with the Zeus Trojan?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it was just in the news just recently.
But it's been around for quite a while.
Yeah, I guess it was discovered in 2007, I think.
Yep.
And what that does is it's stealing money from banks, from online, you know, when you go online.
Just a little bit?
Yeah, a lot. It's like over $3 million just recently. It's been
pocket change.
Yeah, pocket change.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of that's done from overseas. You know, and people need to know what you can do to defend against those. So,
right.
Like antivirus, you need to use your antivirus.
Yes.
Use anti-malware, anti-spyware. Like one of our tutorials, I said I like to use Avast for the antivirus.
Right.
I like to use Malwarebytes for anti-malware.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, those are my favorites.
Okay.
But there's other free ones out there that you can use.
I'm going to have to go back and see that tutorial again.
Right. But you use Linux, so nothing happens to Linux,
well,
does it?
no, that's not exactly true. But we have things like the oh gosh, although it's so rare we rarely do it. But Clam AV is very popular.
Okay. And get something that will scan for rootkits too.
Yes.
Some of your antivirus may find it, but nothing's 100%. That's why.
Right.
And sometimes I'll even use more than one anti-malware.
Yes.
Because sometimes, I mean, at work, I've used 3 different ones. They've all 3 found different things that the other ones have missed.
Now, do they have problems overlapping each other and maybe see the signature of one as a virus?
Antivirus may have that problem. I haven't had that problem with malware.
Malware, yeah.
Right, with malware. But yeah, and sometimes you'll see, like when you're installing an antivirus, it may say, well, if you have another one, uninstall it before you install ours. But you always need one. I think something is better than nothing.
Absolutely.
But Avast is my favorite. You may have a favorite. Yeah. But like you said, Linux doesn't have as big an issue as Windows.
Well, it doesn't, because you talk about rootkits, and our whole thing is that when you're root, and of course you never go into full user mode as root for that exact reason.
Okay.
But the only way that you can even like to print off of here, you got to put in a root password.
Interesting. So you got to have a real stringent control to be able to do just about anything.
It's role-based computing, so that if you're not administrator,
then you're not going to do anything.
You're just Joe
I guess
average.
That's good and bad, really. I mean,
it is. It gets inconvenient, especially if the printer goes into a buffer and or you've disconnected, and then when you reconnect, you have to reinitiate the session all over again.
Right.
But it's all about security versus convenience.
Yeah, and security is important. You know, we both will agree on that. But I don't really think you can be too cautious, but like you were saying, sometimes it can become inconvenient.
Yes.
Like Windows has the user access control.
Yes.
I turn mine off because I think it's annoying for me, but there's some users that I think should have it on.
Absolutely.
For their safety. Another thing you need to do to help protect against stuff like viruses and spyware and malware and this Zeus Trojan that we were talking about, and botnets too. You're familiar with a botnet is?
Yeah, where the program and these little robots.
Right. Right. They take control of your computer, and it's a big group of them. It's a botnet. So thousands, of computers. You need to update Windows. To get the latest updates.
I did. I updated to Ubuntu.
There you go. but Ubuntu and Linux has updates too, security
That's
updates,
exactly right?
And it's very important always to get those updates. You might not need to get updates for certain software, but always for the operating system, in my opinion.
I agree. Although as more of these software applications are written in common languages like Java, something like OpenOffice, it's Java-based. If there's a vulnerability that's Java-based, it doesn't matter what your operating system is.
Right.
It's going to get you on your phone. It's going to get you on your Mac. It's going to get you on your Linux box.
Right. So they're out there. I mean, there's always people out there that think it's either fun to destroy your data or who
a lot of it's social engineering
problems for even our country.
Yeah.
For example, there's been a lot of cyber attacks against the United States that people might not know about. In fact, I was reading something the other day that says more than 100 countries are currently trying to break into U.S. networks.
All the time.
All the time. And I guess the two biggest ones would be, what do you think the two biggest countries would be?
Probably China and Russia.
That is correct. You know,
that's why I have my Homeland Security pin. So.
That's why you have a Homeland Security. And I have a master's in public administration with a concentration in Homeland Security.
On Homeland Security,
so, yeah, so it's very important, you know, and people might think, well, how can we help? Get your updates.
That's right.
Get your antivirus, get your anti-spyware, because we don't want the botnets to be helping these foreign countries, because they can be in China but control our computers to attack us.
Well, and they do. That's exactly right, because, well, I was in a situation back in 2006 where, working with the Department of Commerce, the group that deals with the international trade, that group was getting like 400 attacks a day from this one region of China. And they knew it, we knew it. Their solution actually was to move over to NetWare, because it was more obscure, plus the additional layers of security, and they weren't ready to make the migration to Linux yet. So you know, they went to NetWare, but you know, there are people that's their job. But in all fairness, you know, we've got the same thing. I mean, our cyberspace is mostly patrolled by the Air Force, and then it goes on to other agencies. But you know, when it's all said and done, the internet is policed by the Air Force.
The whole entire internet policed by the Air Force. Is that what you said, or?
Primarily for our country, yeah. You know, if there's a huge cyber attack, they're going to be the first responders.
Okay. And did you know that, I guess in 2007 and 2008 is when our government actually, I guess, recognized cyber war as becoming a staple?
Yeah.
And you know when that occurred, don't you? That's when probably the Russians may have attacked Georgia and I think it was Estonia.
Yeah.
Do you remember when they did? Yeah.
Well, 2007, there was a lot of documentation on it. It had been, I've got documents going back to the 90s, though.
Oh yeah, I mean it's nothing new.
No.
I mean this has been happening ever since.
Well, we've been doing cyber warfare since World War II.
Right. Oh yeah, really.
It's just different technology.
Yeah, that's interesting. People think of the internet, but I'm sure you remember people using dial-up internets to.
Well, remember, IBM was selling computers to the Germans.
Right, right. That's
think
interesting
about that
too. Right. That's really interesting. And you know, just recently too, I guess the first public example of an actual worm written to attack control devices was just recently over in Iran, when they were, I guess there was a worm or a virus or however you want to determine, because there is a difference between a worm and a virus. Viruses replicate, worms may not.
That's correct.
Right, and it was targeted to the Iranian nuclear power plant, which is probably one of the secret ones. We don't know. So we don't know who really, you know, caused.
Sure.
You know, it could have been the Israelis. Could have been us. We don't know.
Yeah. Or it could be a rogue group of their own.
Right. That's an interesting question too, because you know a lot of people think, you know, well, how, you know, we have problems with terrorists. When are these terrorists going to get this ability? Well, right now, in my opinion, they don't really have the capability to create their own tools to attack non-member states. You know, the terrorist groups. And people. Now, when you say China, we don't consider them terrorists because terrorists don't wear uniforms. They don't work for countries. They're individual groups who coerce.
Warfare versus terrorism is two
totally different things. And there's as many definitions for terrorism as there are Linux distributions. No one can.
Hey, wait a minute. Okay.
Well, no one can really agree on the definition of terrorism. The FBI has one definition. You know,
CIA does, State Department does, and
So that's about all I have right now. And we'll talk about a couple more things in our next segment.
That'll be great. Well, thanks for joining us on this segment of MouseClicksTV.com. I'm Don Corbett, and keep clicking.
Hi, my name's Tim Myers with MouseClicksTV.com, and I'm here with Don Corbett, the Linux guy. Hi, Don. How you doing this week?
I'm doing great.
Great.
Doing great.
What are we going to talk about?
Well, we're going to continue with a previous discussion on cloud computing, and the big question, why the cloud and what the cloud? You know, what the cloud's going on? So, you know, Google Apps has certainly brought the idea of bringing your applications off of your desktop onto the cloud, so that whether I'm accessing something from my phone, whether I'm accessing it from my laptop, or from my workstation, I got the same thing in the same place every time just by going through a browser. But there's a lot more to it than that, because some folks want to have a partial private cloud. You know, if you're somebody like GE or Procter and Gamble, you want to take those extra CPU cycles and use them for yourself, and you know that's part of having infrastructure cloud.
Right.
Because we've really gone from standalone computing to a WAN environment, to a cluster, and now to the cloud. And it just keeps spreading out farther and farther. So looking at this in the three areas of infrastructure, platform, and application, they are all distinctly different disciplines of the cloud. So with infrastructure, what we look at are things like load balancing. You've heard of software as a service, the SaaS. Well, in this case, it's HaaS, hardware as a service. So people can sell you more CPU cycles. You know, they can sell you a better binding of machines to do the particular job that you want to do.
Yeah, I think that would be important for like universities, because they don't have to buy supercomputers. They can just share amongst each other.
Exactly right. And you know, you get people with these you know, multi-core. And we're talking 6 core CPUs and maybe 16 CPUs on a motherboard, and then many motherboards in a piece of hardware.
So really, in theory, then, if you get all those different computers together, then it could be faster than the fastest supercomputer we have.
Oh, absolutely.
Which saves money and gets stuff done faster.
Tons and tons of money. And in fact, we'll be doing a segment in probably a couple of months. We'll be doing a segment on who's got the fastest computers now and what are they running. Right. And you can take a guess on where I'm going to go with that. So, but also with our infrastructure, we talked last week about the difference between you know, your physical environment versus your virtual environment. But in this ubiquitous cloud that they're talking about, you don't really know anymore what's physically in your facility and when you've left, when you've gone to the virtual. And that can be good news, bad news. With public, private, or hybrid, where it's part public, part private, that's when, if you have an abundance of CPUs at your facility, you know, maybe you are a GE aircraft where you're doing these aerodynamic testing and that, and they've got, you know, lots and lots of clusters going on there. Or you're Procter and Gamble, and you got facilities there where you're already doing molecular modeling on a new piece of soap. You know, you don't need all that horsepower all the time, so you can in fact then rededicate that in the public or private environment. But you have to be careful.
And they charge for that, right? I mean,
you
Procter
absolutely
Gamble
would charge for that. And,
so they can,
and that's what Amazon and Google are all about.
That's great. So you're making some money there. Instead of letting those unused CPU cycles go to waste, you're actually...
Well, it's just like if you have a wind farm or you have a solar farm at your home, you can actually sell that excess energy back to the power company, and they have to buy it back from you. But you know, we really haven't set those laws into place yet in terms of data. Right. So it's a different way to go. Totally different way to go.
It's a fairly new technology, and I'm sure they'll work it out eventually, I'm sure.
But the whole thing here is that you have a whole co-locate data center that's now in this fuzzy cloud model that you can no longer stick your finger on. Oh, that's where it is. Right. And I was talking to some of the folks from Microsoft, because you know they have a cloud offering as well, and they are now building these what look like semi-trailer trucks or rail cars that house hundreds of CPUs. They'll take up to 3,000 kilowatts of power per environment, and they can you know, roll these into areas and create these new data centers within days. The challenge there is, does the power grid have enough power to support what they're building there? They're doing it, Google's doing it, Amazon's doing it, and a lot of other private people are doing it. Even the birds and bees and educated fleas are doing it. You know? Kind of wild. Another thing with the infrastructure is, you know, this is where your public DNS is going to take place, so that your machine can be identifiable throughout the internet. You know, there's no point in having a lot of horsepower if nobody can get to it. Right. So the infrastructure, hardware as a service, is going to handle the public DNS. Also, the hypervisor, which is the management tool, allows you to trigger what computers allow what pieces to go where. It truly is the management console. Two different ways you can do the hypervisor. One is you can secure shell to it, use it in command line. You can also use X windowing into it, some form of X with a GUI interface. And these tools are just now being developed, so a lot of that changes. Most of the folks tend to go through the core hypervisor in command line, just because it's easier and more uniform. Well, uniform makes it easy, you know. It may not be easy from not knowing what the commands are, but definitely from a uniformity standpoint, the secure shell on the command line is the way to go.
All computing started out with a command line.
Absolutely right.
Nothing was like Windows or your graphical interface on Linux.
Not
it
at
all
all.
started out, I mean, DOS, remember DOS?
Oh yeah, but then first thing they do is put on Windows for Workgroups, or Windows 3.11 or 3X or 2. And that windowing, but if you remember at that point, that windowing was just a cover over top of DOS.
Yeah, it's just makes it nice for humans.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
And we need to remember that that's all these GUI interfaces are.
Right.
It's still on top of an operating system, whether it's what now we know. When we say Windows, people think the GUI thing, but there's really that DOS type of component underneath it.
Right, exactly.
So the second level is the platform. Having a platform as a service, and this is where we can create images. If I need 5 computers, I can just go click, 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 and have 5 computers. I'm done. That's that middle section of platform as a service. The other thing there is that will help prevent vendor lock-in once we have the standards. So if you need Windows, you got Windows. You need Mac, you got Mac. You need Linux, you got Linux. Because you're going to be buying the application is what you're normally going for. And you don't really care what the underlying operating system is, as long as it's there and it's working.
Shouldn't have to care, really.
You don't, and it's that way with our website. I mean, some of the websites that we sponsor, I know most of them are on Linux, but I know a few of them aren't. That's okay. I just want to get the job done.
I mean, even though I'm a Windows guy, we run our website on a Linux server.
Because you've got that platform as a service. It's for utility purposes. It's instance driven, so that if you need 3 or 4 things to happen, you make them happen, and when you're done, you shut them down and you're no longer having to pay for it. The 3 most used operating systems in this environment is Fedora, which is the public version of Red Hat, Ubuntu, which is the convenient version of Debian, and Windows also has their computing available. HPC and HA, high performance computing and high availability computing, basically 2 separate ends of the same coin, or 2 separate sides of the same coin. With high performance computing, this is where you need a lot of number crunching. You may be doing things like molecular modeling, aerodynamics, fluid dynamics, weather, things like that, or virtual reality, all very high performance computing. The opposite side of that is high availability computing, where you may not be doing a lot of number crunching, but you want to make sure that when these things are going, that when these things are running, that it's always running. And in fact, one of the high available computing things is what makes my droid work, as you just heard. So
it works.
And it's always available, right? So, and if a CPU fails in your cluster, you have the ability to, it just shifts
to another.
And you didn't have to do anything about it.
It's all transparent.
Yep, and in most cases it happens so fast that you didn't even notice that it happened. The final version is the application, the software as a service, SaaS, and that's what most people think about when they think cloud computing. You have that elastic availability, so that when you need resources, it's there. As soon as you don't need them, they shut down and you don't have to pay for them. It releases when you're finished. That's real important. It shuts off the lights when you leave the room automatically. But then just as easily, the lights come back on automatically as soon as you walk into the room where you need it. Azure is the Microsoft version of the cloud apps. And of course, Google Apps is the more open source version of it. And it's built on one of the Linux distributions, or many of them, actually. With applications, you want to make sure that you have multi-tenancy, and that means that, for example, if you're running an Oracle database and you have 5,000 different things you're running, you still only have one instance of the database. You don't have 5,000 Oracles running out there. But that means they have to come up with new ways of pricing those kind of things. And that's really going to start an entirely different subscription base, pay-as-you-go base. But two things that are common. One is that you need plugins for your user interface for the web. The other thing is that you need to have common language. So most of this stuff's going to be either written in Java, Ajax, Visual Basic, or C++. And maybe we can go into more on that in a different show.
Okay. So that's about all the time we have left for this week's segment. We'll be back shortly. Don't forget to go to www.mouseclickstv.com to look at our website. We're going to have some great changes there. So visit us soon and keep clicking.
Hey Mouse Clickers, this is Marcus once again. We've been talking about iTunes 10, and one of the big complaints about iTunes 10 is their new blue icon. They've done away with the old DVD/CD image and did a little something new. I kind of like it. But if you don't, there's an easy way to change all of the icons in Mac OS 10. First thing you want to do is find a reputable website that has icons listed. One of the ones I like is interfacelift.com. They've got a pretty good selection of different things. The other one is We Love Icons. And as you can see, they have some pretty cool iTunes 10 icons right on the front page. So once you download your icons, they'll go ahead and open up, and we'll go ahead and pull up some right here. I've got a folder right here called Music. I'm going to go ahead and change this from the normal folder image to this cool vinyl record icon. If you don't know, I DJ a little bit. If you want to check out more about that, you can go to djtree.com. Hit me up, tell me what you think. But what you go ahead and do is select the folder that you want to change or the application, hit Command I, and that'll bring up the info about that folder. Go ahead and click on the icon that you want to change, hit Command C for cut, go over to your information window, select the icon right up in the upper left, and hit Command V. And there you go. Your preview has changed, and your folder has changed, or your application. It still functions like a regular folder or application. You just have a cooler customized desktop or icon. So that's it. Keep clicking and check me out at djtree.com or MouseClicks TV.